Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Ryan's Cinematic Obsessions. Today we're going to be talking about the early Edison era of films. We're also going to be talking about my top favorite films of 2015. Alright, well first up today we're going to be talking about the early Edison films. Alright, a lot of people don't realize that Thomas Edison, everybody knows he was a huge, famous inventor. He invented amazing things that we use to this day. And he's probably considered one of the most famous inventors. But what doesn't really get talked about in the mainstream circle as much as I think it should is how he is pretty much an early pioneer in film. And a lot of the stuff that he helped put a concept to basically became the tools that we use to make film. And so in this we're going to be talking about the early Edison films, specifically a period before the turn of the century. So I would say 1895, I'm pretty sure, to about 1900. So that's what we're going to focus in on today. I got my notes right here, and I pretty much know a lot of this stuff just from all the research that I've done. But I have some notes here of just some dates and numbers and stuff like that I just pulled off online. But Edison Studios, that is basically the name of a lot of these early films. And Edison Studios was basically controlled by Thomas Edison. He made, I would say, maybe 1,000 to 1,200 films in that time frame, in that era. And he is basically the guy who invented what is called the kinetoscope. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. Basically, that's one of those big devices that back in the day they would walk up, put their eye into it, and then they would see the film inside of it, whether it was like a series of pictures or it was just a straight up film. So they did that, and some of them they used just snapshots of pictures, and so on and so forth. I'm actually going to be including some films in this video, so it isn't just going to be me talking about the films that Thomas Edison produced. But it wasn't necessarily a movie projector, because you put your eye into it and you could kind of just see, it was just how it operated. I could get into the science of it, but it'd be kind of boring. But basically, it's those big things that were in shops that you could look in and see moving pictures. And so the first concept of it was done around 1888, and it was developed by his employee William Kennedy Laurie Dixon between 89 and 92. What they eventually did was, and this is this is a huge piece, the kinetograph, which is a motion picture camera, and is actually, there's a huge group of people that say that Edison was the inventor of this, but then there's a huge group of people out there that say he actually stole the idea. So that's pretty much debatable, but you can't say that Edison wasn't groundbreaking in terms of what he did for film, because he is the one who has his name attached to a lot of the stuff. The first commercially exhibited motion picture in the United States were from Edison. That's huge. The first things were from Edison. So really you could debate all you want about, did he really do this? But all that matters is the fact that he was the first one that produced and showed the public these new things called film. Alright, and the first commercially exhibited motion pictures that actually premiered in the United States were produced by Edison. He actually premiered them in a parlor in New York City on April 14th, 1894. And it actually consisted of a bunch of shorts. Basically, it was not narrative driven. It was not story driven. It was stuff that was just showing actions that people were doing, of things that people were doing. People, just an example, if I me and a friend shook hands. That would be a video. That would be not a video. That would be a film that was shown. But eventually, you know, the French, the British, everybody started doing narrative type stuff. And by the time, I would say the early 1900s, that is when most of Edison's, the Edison studio banner, most of their stuff at that point was actually narrative driven with stories and stuff like that. But some of these films that were shown in these programs, I'm going to show you here. And, you know, probably the most famous one is of two people kissing. And so it's called The Kiss. And The Kiss is a very, it's really funny because we look back at it today and it's just two people kissing. And it's just really kind of, they're just having fun. You know, obviously they're in conversation, that kind of thing. But I will show it to you now, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. At the time, that film was so controversial, just completely shocking to show that kind of behavior. And it wasn't just the churches, it was basically, there was a lot of people in general. Nobody, not nobody, but not a lot of people were interested in showing that to their families, that kind of a thing. It was just, and it was denounced. Public kissing at the time could actually lead to prosecution. A bunch of imitators started doing movies like that. The next short that they would do is the Annabelle Serpentine Dance, which is a short silent film produced and distributed by the Edison Manufacturing Company in 1895. And basically this one I've always seen. It has a really brilliant use of tinting. They would tint certain aspects of it to give it a little bit of color to it. And this is it right here. And as you can see, in those little aspects of color, those were hand tinted. That means every frame of it was done by hand, which is crazy. Next up, we have the Glenroy Brothers, also known as comic boxing, the Glenroy Brothers. And it was made in 1894, and it's about 27 seconds long and shows the Glenroy Brothers boxing. That's as much explaining as I can get. So we'll go ahead and show that right here. Wasn't that a good fight? That's like Raging Bull style fighting right there. Next up, we have The Barber Shop, and this one came in 1894. And as you can see, around this time period, they were just doing a lot of experimenting. This was a new thing. People didn't know it was going to last as long as it did, or as it is. You know, to this day, we are still making films is a huge part of culture. You look at everything that's actually come out since then, and I'm just blown away by the amount. You know, it could have been something that could have just faded away after 10 years, and there were times in the history of cinema that it actually pretty much was doomed, and people thought it was eventually going to die out. One of the most famous times that I love to talk about is, the new Hollywood movement of the late 60s and, 70s or so. And that was just a time period where film was failing and they had to reinvent it. And all these outsiders were doing that. All these mavericks were doing that. And they were going against the mold and they were breaking the mold and they were doing controversial things. And that's kind of how it was back then in this time period that we're talking about now, with the kissing, with the boxing. All that stuff was just controversial when it came out. It was new. It was scaring people. People were, I'll talk about this. There's a lot of stuff in my own city. Jacksonville, Florida was one of the first major film producing cities, and I have so much history in this city, and people were, protesting because people were filming police chases in the streets. Politicians ran against driving the film industry out of Florida. And that's just kind of, the whole idea of film in general was just so controversial. And recently I've kind of had a rebirth in my interest for classic cinema in terms of the birth of cinema, basically. And so that's something I've been, interested in my whole life. But here and there I'll come and I'll put in a bunch of movies and I'll just really do some research. And I am actually getting ready to show a clip of something, other YouTubers into the same thing. I know some of you that are watching this are into old cinema like this. And, me and my buddy Luke, Razorwire Reviews, we talk about cinema history all the time. And there's actually a clip that I'm actually getting ready to show of when he came to visit, and we're sitting there watching a lot of these silent films. So I'll show you that right here. Alright, yeah, me and Luke are just down here. It's already pretty late, so, we wanted to watch like a Criterion of something, and it's already almost 1 o'clock in the morning, so we figured it's already really too late to watch like a 3-hour movie. But I have this Kino video collection, and basically it's a huge collection of early cinema from the first movies ever, and just a bunch of different topics. Let's see if you can see that. And it just has a bunch of shorts and and this is the one that we're going to check out.
These are all in color, right? Because I don't watch black and white movies.
Yeah, they're all in color and they're all in 3D. So, and yeah. So that's what we're going to be watching.
Okay.
That's right when I put my camera on it. Yeah, so we started watching these, and if you, I'm not going to show it on camera, but a lot of the early movies was pretty much just naked women walking around. They would take pictures of naked women and keep it and put it in a series of shots. And this is from 1870 something. So
that's a lot of nudity. I can't believe it.
Oh my gosh. We gotta fast forward that.
Full frontal, I guess is what they call it.
Gosh,
right?
I mean.
Chill frontal.
So basically now we're watching one called, I think it's called The Kiss, and I guess it's one of the first kisses ever recorded on film. And of course when I turn the camera, it would go off of it.
Wow, that's some sort of slow motion effect.
Yeah, it's just it's cool watching these things because it's really you get to see how far we've come. And a lot of inventions come and go, and you think, what if they just stopped making movies at one point or another? And I guess they actually thought that was going to happen when TV came out. So yeah, that's why a lot of the downfall of the movie studios happened. And thankfully the 70s brought us Martin Scorsese and that whole crew that came and revolutionized film and changed film forever. And yeah, you could definitely tell a lot of this was experimental, because look, there's footage of me stretching or flexing my muscles. But I'm actually kind of shocked about how some of the quality of the footage.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of cool stuff. Like right now they're experimenting by filming cockfighting. And this is like, in the 1890s.
Yeah.
This is over 130 years old.
Crazy stuff. The barber shop.
The barber shop.
Someone
This one's called the barber shop.
Just literally someone having a shave. Or he might have his haircut as well. It's kind of fascinating, really.
Yeah. Like you just think about how like it was like a huge deal back then. Like nowadays people don't even think anything of it, but like them filming this was like a huge thing.
Yeah, I guess like around this time they would like be like, hey, we could like, shave someone and have like have a moving picture of it.
Yeah.
It would have been like them seeing like a Harry Potter picture. It's like it's a picture, but it's moving,
Yeah.
It would have been so exciting.
It's like they had the same reaction to like everybody seeing Star Wars for the first time. Damn, that guy's getting shaved. Dang, man, crazy. Never thought I'd see that.
This picture's going on forever. Oh, the pillow fight with some.
Oh, the great cinematic pillow fight.
Yeah, this may very well be the first pillow fight in cinema history.
And it was just a fun time. And I've been using the same set to watch them since then. I mean, you could go on YouTube and get them, but it's nice to have them in a set because, you could get it kind of slightly restored, that kind of stuff. So that's it for this part of the Edison segment. I think next week we may talk about a little later of an era in Edison's time period. If it's not next week, it'll be another week. It'll be a part 2 of the Edison early cinema years. But it's probably not going to be the early cinema or early Edison because we're going to be talking about the main, some of the main meaty stuff that he put out. So we'll talk about that another time. So I hope you enjoyed this segment. Alright everybody, next up we're going to be talking about my favorite films of 2015. Alright everybody, let's talk about my top 9 favorite films of 2015. Yes, I saw more than 9 films, but I wanted to do something different. Everybody has top 5s and top 10s. I've done top 10s in the past. Today, I'm going to do a top 9. This is, kind of a mixed bag kind of a list because there's some stuff that's just kind of blockbuster type stuff, and then there's other things that are kind of the artsy kind of film-loving stuff, I guess you could say. Cinephile type stuff. But I love everything, and 2015 was a great year in film. I will say right off the bat, I still haven't seen The Hateful Eight. I still haven't seen Room. I haven't seen a bunch of other things that you guys might be like, where's this film? Where's this film? I haven't seen every film that came out, especially even some of the popular ones I haven't seen yet. So let's go ahead and talk about my top 9 films of 2015. At number 9, we have The Man from U.N.C.L.E. This originally was not on my list. The first time I watched it, I loved it. I just love Guy Ritchie's direction. I love the way the film looked. I loved everything about the film. But when it was over, that was it. I kind of forgot about it. Then a few days later, I started talking about it with my wife and started thinking about it a little bit more. And I realized I really loved it a lot more than I originally thought. On my way home from work one night, I went and bought it. And I proceeded to watch it twice that week. And now I love it. I just love it, love it, love it. Really love everything about it. I just love that genre of film anyways. I love spy films and I love spy comedy type films. But it had a really great story to it too. So yes, Number 9, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Number 8, James Bond's latest outing in Spectre. Now, if you follow my channel for a while, you'll know that I'm obsessed with James Bond films, and this one did not disappoint. I know it was more divisive and it kind of split people compared to how Skyfall was, but I loved every single second of Spectre. I thought it was beautifully shot. I thought the story was just told perfectly. And Christoph Waltz is just the king of dialogue. I love his dialogue, and I could keep going, but I know not everybody's seen it yet. So I will just leave it at that. Spectre was a great film. Flawed. Yes, it was still flawed. But what film isn't? So, yes, number 8, Spectre. Number 7, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This is a film that I was really looking forward to, and I was blown away when I saw it. I'm really into the Mission Impossible films. I've loved every single one of them. The first Mission Impossible film is one of my all-time favorite films, and it's one that I revisited all the time when I was a kid. And it was actually one of those movies that I could watch twice in one day if I wanted to. I've done it before, and I'm sure I'll do it again. But I just love that film so much. So Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, I would say, is actually the best Mission Impossible movie thus far. Of course, I'll always prefer the original film, but that's just because it's aged on me. It's a classic to me. This one might eventually do that, but it's definitely the best Mission Impossible film. The team working together, the plot was so complex and so nice to see it unravel the way it did, and it was just a beautifully filmed, brilliantly written film. I thought the writing was actually probably the best part. Of course, the acting was top notch, but the writing was just amazing. I loved it. Next up at number 6, we have Best of Enemies, which is a Netflix documentary. This one is one I didn't even really hear of until it premiered on Netflix. For those of you who know me, personally, I'm kind of into the whole political, realm. I'm really into politics. Not really one to, start boasting about what I believe and stuff like that. I love politics in general. I love not the formality. I love how it is. I love primary seat. I love the whole idea of politics. I used to read all these classic books and philosophers talking about politics from ancient Greece and all that stuff. I've just always been into that topic, and I'm really somebody who's dead center on everything, and so I could kind of sit back and just look at everything and just see how everybody's reacting. So I've really been into that kind of documentaries, all that kind of stuff. Best of Enemies was actually a film about the debate between Gore Vidal and William F. Buckley. This was during, I think, pretty sure it was the late 60s, and there was a convention going on, there was an election going on, and ABC, this channel ABC, was third in the ratings, and they were trying to think of something to spice up their ratings in terms of the political climate, by reporting on the political climate in the convention. During the convention, it was the Republican convention, they had the brilliant idea, which didn't really seem brilliant at the time, but they said, why don't we get Gore Vidal, who, is as left as they get at this time period, and William F. Buckley, who's as right as they get, and just sit there and talk about their opinions. And it actually turned into a very bitter rivalry between the two. The debate wasn't really a debate as much as personal attacks on each other. And that whole, scene that they were in around that time period, they're considered like the first talking heads that we have all over TV now, from, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, everything. They were actually considered the first talking heads. But this documentary really explored their rivalry and how it just lasted their whole lives, the rest of their life. And it was brilliant. I loved every single second of it. It was enthralling. And it was actually thrilling too, so I definitely enjoyed it. The top 5 is coming up now. Number 5, Steven Spielberg's Bridge of Spies. I love this film. I loved every single thing about the film. Tom Hanks was extraordinary. All the supporting cast was. And really, it's one of Steven Spielberg's best films. It was almost a surprise of actually how good it was and how mainstream it was. Not everybody is into, some of the more historical stuff that Spielberg's done. Some people complain about Lincoln being really kind of boring, which I don't see that. I love that film so much. But this film, with the story about a spy trade and how it's like a lawyer who's in the middle of this huge Cold War trying to do a swap, and it's such a human story. That's really what appealed to me with this film. And I know it was crazy. This film did not get a lot of promotion. There was previews and stuff, but that was pretty much it. And it was $40 million is so much it cost, and it ended up grossing over $100 million. And a lot of that was because after the movie came out, after that first week, you did not see any teasers or anything really on TV for it. And through word of mouth, it ended up grossing like triple its budget, which is huge. So, Bridge of Spies is just amazing. Number 4, Mad Max Fury Road. I've talked about this film so much, and let's just say it was a lovely day. Number 3, Spotlight. I'd been looking forward to this film for a long time. I'm a huge Michael Keaton fan, my favorite actor ever. I'm not saying he's the best actor ever. He's my favorite. He's been my favorite since as long as I can remember. But this film is the Pulitzer Prize winning Boston Globe and Spotlight Unit investigation into sexual abuse scandals of the Catholic Church. And this took place about 2000 or late 90s, early 2000s. Mainly the early 2000s. So it wasn't late. I think there's a part of it that takes place in the 90s, but that's about it. But this film is like it's the All the President's Men of the 21st century. It is such an amazing film, and one of the best films I've seen in a long time. Number 2, The Revenant. One film that I've looked forward to for so long, and I finally saw it opening day, and it was just everything about it. The acting, the cinematography, the writing, the camera work. It was so beautifully directed. I know everybody's probably talked about this movie, so I'll just leave it at that. Leonardo DiCaprio has a great performance. Tom Hardy, did a phenomenal job. And Leonardo DiCaprio has always been one of my favorite actors. I think he's one of the best actors that we have now. I love pretty much every single one of his films. It's not my favorite role that he's done, because I think he's done other stuff that was better. A lot of this film, he's in pain. He's making noises. He's acting, and it shows. Like, it looks like he's really going through this. But in terms of dialogue and all, I think he's done more. Physically, he's done stuff with this. He did crazy stuff for this film. But in terms of dialogue and actually a good chunk of acting in terms of words and everything, spoken dialogue, I think he's done better. I think he was better in Wolf of Wall Street. And my all-time favorite Leonardo DiCaprio performance, though, is The Departed. In terms of acting skill, is pretty much a tie between The Departed and Wolf of Wall Street. But I loved The Revenant. Number 1, Star Wars The Force Awakens. Did you think it was going to be anything else? But I love this film, and I know you guys are probably tired of hearing about it. I loved it. Loved every single second of it, and I saw it 3 times in the theaters, and I don't regret spending money every single time. I don't regret it, and I will do it again. I will continue to do it. So, thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed all the films in this list. Let me know what you like down below. Thank you so much for watching this entire episode of Ryan Cinematic Obsessions, and I will see you guys in the next video.